there is this sort of, I think, many academic social scientists act as if it, that they can, treat if something was published, it's a scientific fact. And it's just, the fact that it was published is a fact, but its claims, conclusions, or results are not facts. They're, it may be facts that they found it, assume there was no funny business, but it's just not. You need years to figure out whether the main finding was true. It needs to be replicated by independent labs. People need to criticize the interpretation. I mean, there's just like all sorts of ways in which just because something was published, it does not necessarily mean now we all have to accept that a new fact was
Yeah,
discovered.
it's a
So
provisional thing until you get
yes,
more replication.
and I would not give it very much weight. I would give it almost no weight on the basis of one lab produces a 3-study paper. It's like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Maybe they found something. I'm glad they got this thing published. Maybe the person will now get tenure, and maybe they'll now get a $500,000 grant and become famous. But no one has there's no impetus on anybody to believe that anything they found is true because one lab produced a 3-study paper. Like, you can believe it if you want, but none of the rest of us need to believe it. That's insufficient evidence to believe anything. It doesn't mean they're wrong. I'm just saying I don't have to believe it. So, okay. So that's the replication crisis. Then you have allegiance bias.
I was going to say, if you like, I have your slides. I can pull them up if you like.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, you're welcome to. Feel free. So, there's allegiance bias, which, now this doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes happen. That if a person is steeped in and sort of an advocate of a certain kind of theory or intervention, this was first discovered in clinical psychology. So if you're a cognitive behavioral, somebody might be a cognitive behavioral therapist. What allegiance bias is the tendency for people who believe in some theory or intervention to find stronger effects of that, manipulations designed from that theory or interventions based on that theory. They find bigger effects than do pretty much everybody else. Again, this doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes there are no allegiance bias effects in certain literatures, but sometimes they do occur. And so the great message is, just because the peer-reviewed literature says something doesn't mean it's true, especially if it's published by an advocate. And the most recent version of this was there's this just brilliant debunking of growth mindset interventions. And the whole thing is just everyone, if you want to learn how to do rigorous scientific skepticism, that article, it's interesting as growth mindset, but to me, it's even more interesting as this is how you do scientific skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and this is actually a real good point to make a point, because one of my concerns with like activism and academia and what have you is the fact that, yes, over the last few years in particular, the trust in academia and the trust in scientists writ large, not just social scientists, has gone down. It's in a number of different things, which is a concern. But the reason I bring it up is that the trust in academia in peer review, which sometimes is not worth it, it does drive other things. And the reason I mention that is because the growth mindset intervention thing has become really prominent in social emotional learning as implemented in K through 12 schools. So
right.
Another good friend of the channel, Deb Philman, who runs The Reason We Learn, has talked about this in depth about how much of a problem it's been. But things like this need to get out there just as much, and yet it doesn't necessarily.
Well, right, yeah. So I'm just going to read this stuff highlighted. I don't know if people can see it, and it's like a pleasure to read. We found major shortcomings in study design, analysis, and reporting, and suggestions of researcher and publication bias. Authors with a financial incentive to report positive findings published significantly larger effects than authors without this incentive. Across all studies, we observed a small overall effect, a non-zero effect, which was non-significant after correcting for potential publication bias.
Exactly.
That is, it's not clear there's anything here at all, and no one has any need to believe that the hundreds of papers on growth mindset have produced anything of value. Now,
Mm.
maybe they have, and maybe 10 or 20 years from now, someone will clean up all this stuff up and they'll do the manipulation in the right way, and it will have a substantial, I mean, maybe that's hypothetically impossible. This debunking doesn't rule that out as a possibility. But here now, after 20 years of this research and hundreds of studies, there is no reason for anyone to believe it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But of course the sort of comeback is, and I think you got to this later in your slides and in other talks that you've given. Well, but there's all these studies. They made it through peer review. How could they all be wrong, right? But I go back. I think it was Einstein who said it at one point. It's just like, yeah, no, no amount of studies can prove me right, but one can prove me wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think this falls into that category.
Yeah, well, it is a little different in social science. So let's say we can go with growth mindset. I mean, again, at this point, I think it's all hot air at this point. But I could be wrong about that. Maybe there is some way in which it actually matters. But so let's take the counterfactual that it does matter if it's done right, and it's a small to modest effect. Maybe there are conditions under which it's larger or zero, but the run rate is a small to moderate effect. If it's a small to moderate effect on a study by study basis, you can have lots of studies not finding it and it still be a real effect. So let's say there were 100 good, high quality studies that even McNamara and Burgoyne would agree, wow, these are high quality. They didn't find 100 high quality, they found 0 high quality studies. But let's say there were 100 that would meet their standards for high quality. Okay. If there's no there, all else equal, you would expect 5 out of 100 to be significant.
Right.
Let's say 25 out of 100 are significant, and they're done well. Well, that's way more than you would expect if there was no there, even though 3/4 don't find anything at all. So that's Einstein may be right with respect to physics, but it's not, that doesn't hold with respect to social science.
I see. I see. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Boy, I appreciate conversations like this. I am a physical scientist, not a social scientist.
Yeah, 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 and I mean, I do think my field is filled with lots of nonsense, and that's usually people will hear me say that, I write about it and all that kind of stuff. However, this other side, that really you can actually have lots of failed replications and the phenomena still be true. You usually hear that from people engaging in apologetics for the field, sort of defensively defending the field, but there's a way in which it is actually literally and scientifically true.
Mm, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Did you like that video? Are you curious about the rest of the video? Because that clip came from an episode of SciChat Saturday, and the full episode is linked in the description. As always, stay curious.